The small town of Willow Creek had always been peaceful. People knew each other by name, and life followed a gentle rhythm. Children played in the narrow streets, shopkeepers greeted customers with smiles, and neighbors stopped to chat over fences. Nothing out of the ordinary ever happened here. It was the kind of place where everyone believed they understood life, where surprises were few, and where every day was much like the one before. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, a stranger arrived. She stepped out of a shimmering light that seemed to appear from nowhere, as if the very air itself had opened to let her through. She was striking, unlike anyone the townspeople had ever seen. Her hair shimmered like silver in the fading sunlight, and her eyes glowed faintly with a color that felt both unfamiliar and powerful. She moved with a confidence that demanded attention, and every step she took seemed to leave an invisible mark of authority. The children stopped their games, their laughter fading into whispers. Shopkeepers froze mid-step, and neighbors leaned over fences trying to get a better look. Rumors had already begun to form before she even spoke. Some claimed she was from another world, an alien with strength beyond human limits. Others thought she might be a legendary warrior from distant lands, a figure of stories that were rarely believed to be true. But there was no time to question her identity, for she made her presence known in the only way she could, by demonstrating power. She raised her hand, and in an instant she lifted a massive boulder from the ground with ease. The weight of it would have crushed any human, yet she held it effortlessly, spinning it in the air as if it were a toy. Gasps filled the air. People stumbled back in fear and amazement. Her movements were fluid, almost dance-like, yet they carried an unmistakable force. Every action, every motion seemed calculated, precise, and unstoppable. The stranger, who would soon be known as the alien warrior princess, did not speak much at first. Words, it seemed, were unnecessary. Her power spoke for her. She strode through the streets, looking at the townspeople as though she were assessing them. Her gaze was sharp, observing every detail, noticing strengths and weaknesses that no ordinary person would see. Yet she did not act cruelly. Her presence alone was enough to command respect and fear. Among the crowd, a man stood quietly, separate from the others. Unlike the frightened or amazed onlookers, he did not gasp or step back. His expression was calm, almost unreadable. He was not tall, nor particularly strong-looking. His clothes were simple and his movements lacked any showiness. Yet, he observed the warrior princess carefully. He noticed the way she relied heavily on her speed and force, how she assumed her strength alone would be enough to overwhelm anyone. He saw the confidence that bordered on arrogance, the kind that could be challenged if approached correctly. The townspeople whispered to each other. "Who is she?" one woman asked, clutching her shawl. "Where did she come from?" Another added. The children huddled together, pointing at the silver-haired stranger with wide eyes. Some ran to their parents, seeking comfort, while others could not look away, fascinated by the display of impossible power. The alien warrior princess finally spoke, her voice clear and commanding. "I am here to test the limits of human courage and skill," she declared. Her words carried a weight that made people instinctively step back. "I will find the strongest among you and see if anyone can survive even a single minute against me." A murmur ran through the crowd. The idea that someone could challenge her, let alone survive a minute, seemed impossible. After all, she had already shown strength far beyond anything humans had ever demonstrated. People shook their heads, convinced that no one could match her. But the quiet man did not move. He stepped forward slowly, deliberately. His calm presence was in stark contrast to the tension around him. He did not shout, did not boast, and did not make a show of bravery. He simply accepted the challenge in his own quiet way, standing with steady eyes and a composed expression. The townspeople gasped again. "What is he thinking?" someone whispered. "Does he not see what she can do?" Another shook his head, in disbelief. "He'll last less than a minute," a shopkeeper muttered, convinced that the outcome was already written. The warrior princess turned her gaze to him, and a faint smile crossed her face. She had expected to face fear, hesitation, or desperation, but this calm, ordinary-looking man did not fit any of those patterns. She felt a spark of curiosity. Who was this human who did not cower? Who had the courage to stand before her without flinching? She decided that he would be the first to face her. The sun dipped further and the evening air grew cooler, but the energy in the town remained charged. Every street corner, every window seemed to hold someone watching, waiting for the confrontation that everyone assumed would be brief. Even the birds had fallen silent, as if nature itself paused to witness what was about to happen. The man adjusted his stance slightly, not in preparation for attack, but as if bracing himself mentally. He understood something that the townspeople did not. True strength is not always about what is visible. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and carefully measured. He observed her movements, her breathing, and even the faintest shifts in her weight. Small details that could make all the difference in a challenge she assumed would be over in seconds. The warrior princess, confident in her abilities, underestimated him completely. She believed her past victories, her experience, and her unmatched power guaranteed a swift triumph. Yet she could not yet see the intelligence, patience, and hidden strength within the human standing before her. The townspeople held their breath. In the quiet tension of that evening, the town of Willow Creek felt as if it had become the center of the universe. A moment that seemed impossible was about to unfold, a moment where ordinary and extraordinary would meet, and where assumptions about strength, courage, and survival would be challenged in ways no one could imagine. And so the stage was set. The quiet man, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in unseen skill, faced the alien warrior princess whose reputation promised instant victory. What neither of them yet knew was that this encounter would not be as brief or as simple as anyone expected. The first minute, the one everyone feared would end in immediate defeat, was about to reveal truths that no one had considered. That power is not only in what can be seen, and that courage sometimes hides in the quietest places. The next morning in Willow Creek, the tension from the previous evening had not faded. The streets that were once calm and quiet were now alive with whispers and speculation. People moved cautiously, as if the very air still carried the energy of the stranger who had appeared so suddenly. Even those who had gone to bed late could not shake the memory of her impossible strength. Children clung to their parents' hands, and shopkeepers peeked nervously out of windows, imagining what might happen next. The alien warrior princess had chosen the quiet man as her first opponent. Word of this decision had spread quickly, and soon the townspeople gathered in the central square to watch what they believed would be a swift, decisive confrontation. Everyone expected the outcome to be clear. The stranger's unmatched power would crush the human in mere moments. Yet, despite their fear, a small flicker of curiosity shone in their eyes. They wanted to see if anyone could really survive a minute against her, even though they secretly believed it impossible. The man stood calmly in the center of the square. His stance was simple but deliberate, feet firmly planted on the ground, hands relaxed by his sides. He did not appear to be preparing for battle in the usual sense. There was no tension in his shoulders, no wild energy radiating from him. Instead, he seemed to be waiting, observing, and understanding. Even from a distance, one could sense a quiet strength that did not rely on force or display. The warrior princess, in contrast, radiated confidence and power. She moved with a grace that was almost intimidating, her every step commanding attention. Her silver hair shimmered in the morning sunlight, and her glowing eyes scanned the crowd, as if searching for any sign of weakness or fear. She had fought countless opponents before, all of whom had been intimidated by her appearance, her speed, and her overwhelming strength. She had never encountered someone who stood so still, so calm, and so unshakable in her presence. She spoke, her voice carrying across the square like a bell. "Do you understand what you face, human?" she asked. There was a hint of amusement in her tone. "I am not ordinary. I have defeated warriors who believed they were strong, who thought they could challenge me. You will last less than a minute. That is all you will survive." The man's reply was quiet, almost casual. "I understand," he said simply. There was no fear in his voice, no hesitation, only a steady calm that contrasted sharply with the warrior princess's intensity. His words were not boastful. They carried a quiet confidence born of preparation and awareness. He knew that strength alone did not determine the outcome, and he believed in patience, observation, and strategy. The townspeople gasped. How could someone respond so calmly in the face of a being with such power? Many whispered to one another, shaking their heads. "He's foolish," said one elder. "No one can survive against her. He'll be gone in seconds." Others felt a strange sense of hope, thinking that maybe courage and intelligence mattered more than brute strength. The warrior princess circled him slowly, testing him, observing his movements. She launched a small demonstration, swinging her arm with incredible speed to strike near him, but not to harm him, at least not yet. The air itself seemed to bend around her motion, and the crowd gasped at the force she displayed. Yet the man did not flinch. Instead, he shifted slightly, just enough to avoid the strike without making it obvious. It was subtle, almost invisible, yet it was enough to show that he had noticed the attack and reacted with precision. Her curiosity grew. This human was not afraid, nor was he reckless. He moved with purpose, calculated and measured. Every step he took seemed to anticipate her actions, and though she had assumed the encounter would be simple, she began to feel something unfamiliar. Interest, and perhaps even respect. "Interesting," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. "You are not like the others." The man said nothing, only continued to observe. He watched her eyes, her hands, and the slight shifts in her stance. Even with her incredible strength, she had habits, patterns that could be anticipated if one paid attention. And he had been watching. This was not about raw power. It was about awareness, timing, and calm under pressure. The warrior princess, confident in her skills, underestimated him. She believed that her experience alone would guarantee victory. She had faced countless warriors who relied on strength and speed, and she had defeated them all. But this man was different. There was no showiness, no arrogance, no desperation, only quiet confidence and a careful understanding of the situation. She had never faced an opponent like him, and that realization sparked a flicker of uncertainty in her mind. The crowd watched in silence. Every person was holding their breath, waiting for the moment when she would strike and he would fall. Children leaned against their parents, eyes wide with fear and fascination. Shopkeepers forgot to tend their stores, unable to look away. The tension was almost unbearable, yet there was also a strange sense of anticipation. Something was about to happen that none of them could predict. The man took a slow, steady breath, preparing himself not for attack but for observation. He understood that rushing in recklessly would be foolish. He also knew that fear could be as dangerous as any weapon. By remaining calm, he maintained control over his mind and body, even in the presence of someone who seemed unstoppable. He was ready, but not in the way anyone expected. The warrior princess, sensing his calm, decided to escalate her demonstration. She moved faster, her arms swinging and her legs striking with incredible precision. She intended to intimidate him, to show him the reality of her power. Yet each attempt was met with subtle movements, small shifts and careful positioning that allowed the man to remain unharmed. His defense was not flashy, but it was effective, and the more he avoided her attacks, the more frustrated she became. This was the first time in her life that she had faced someone who was not immediately intimidated, someone who did not fear her, someone who had the courage, patience, and awareness to meet her challenge without panic. It was a strange and unfamiliar feeling for the warrior princess, and it forced her to rethink everything she believed about strength and victory. The townspeople, witnessing this unexpected standoff, began to understand something important. Survival was not about who could hit the hardest or move the fastest. Sometimes it was about intelligence, observation, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. They watched as the so-called ordinary man stood before the alien warrior princess with quiet confidence, unafraid and unshaken, challenging everything they had assumed about power. By the time the sun reached its peak, the stage was set. The warrior princess and the quiet man faced each other in the center of the square. Neither had yet made a full attack, yet the energy in the air was almost tangible. Every person in Willow Creek seemed to feel it. A mix of fear, fascination, and growing respect for the unexpected courage standing before them. And so, the challenge began. Not with violence, but with observation, strategy, and the quiet understanding that strength is not always visible. The first moment, the one everyone thought would be over in seconds, stretched into something far more complex. The alien warrior princess, confident and powerful, had never met a human like him before, and she was beginning to realize that this encounter would be unlike any other she had experienced. The moment had come. The quiet man and the alien warrior princess faced each other in the center of Willow Creek Square. The crowd of townspeople watched with bated breath, expecting a clash that would be over in seconds. The air was tense, electric with anticipation, as if the world itself paused to see what would happen. The warrior princess flexed her hands, moving with the grace and confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Her silver hair shimmered under the bright morning sun, and her glowing eyes studied the man in front of her, sizing him up, trying to predict his first move. She was confident. Years of battles had taught her that strength, speed, and agility were enough to overwhelm almost anyone. She had defeated warriors from far-off lands, masters who prided themselves on skill and power, and she believed that no human could last against her even for a minute. Yet there was something different about this man. He stood calmly, feet firm on the ground, eyes focused, and body relaxed. There was no fear, no trembling, only quiet observation. It was a subtle power, unlike any she had faced. The princess decided to test him. With a swift movement, she lunged forward, her speed almost a blur. Her hand shot toward him as if it were a striking whip. The crowd gasped. Everyone expected him to be thrown aside immediately, defeated within seconds. But the man moved with surprising awareness. He did not panic or flail. Instead, he shifted just enough to evade the strike. His movement was small, almost imperceptible, yet perfect. He remained upright, balanced, and ready for whatever came next. The warrior princess blinked in surprise. This human had not only avoided her attack but had done so with elegance and control. She quickly recovered, spinning and aiming a series of rapid strikes designed to overwhelm him. Each attack was precise, fast, and deadly. To any ordinary person, they would have seemed unstoppable. Yet, the man dodged, parried, and moved in ways that were almost artistic. His actions were not flashy or aggressive, but they were effective. Every move seemed calculated, anticipating her motions before they fully developed. The townspeople were in shock. "How is he doing this?" whispered one elder. "He's not even strong, but he's surviving," said a shopkeeper, eyes wide. Children pressed against their parents, trying to understand what they were seeing. The man looked ordinary in appearance, yet he moved with a calm skill that none of them had ever witnessed. Their understanding of strength and survival was being challenged before their eyes. The warrior princess increased her speed. She had never faced an opponent who could anticipate her moves. Her attacks became faster, more complex, and even more forceful. Yet the man did not panic. He moved with precision, subtly shifting his weight, adjusting his position, and keeping his focus. He did not try to overpower her or match her strength. Instead, he relied on timing, observation, and strategy. Every movement was controlled, designed to avoid danger while remaining ready to respond. A small crowd had gathered closer, unable to tear their eyes away. Even those who were afraid were captivated by the unexpected skill displayed by the man. They had assumed the alien warrior princess's speed and power would be too much for him, but with every second that passed, he disproved their assumptions. Minute by minute, their disbelief grew. This ordinary human, standing quietly in the center of the square, was not only surviving but adapting to her attacks. The warrior princess's confidence began to waver. She had underestimated him, and that realization made her slightly reckless. She launched a particularly rapid flurry of strikes, aiming to end the confrontation quickly. But the man anticipated her, moving in perfect rhythm with her attacks, avoiding each strike without even appearing to struggle. Then, at the perfect moment, he shifted, using her own momentum to step aside gracefully. She stumbled slightly, surprised that her own force had been turned against her. For the first time in her life, she felt the sting of uncertainty. The crowd gasped. The princess had never stumbled before, never lost her balance against an opponent. The townspeople began to whisper among themselves, excitement and awe mixing with fear. Could he actually be strong? One asked. Another shook their head. No human could do this. But somehow, he is keeping up. The man remained calm throughout. He did not gloat, did not taunt, and did not show any sign of superiority. His focus was entirely on the present moment, on understanding her patterns and responding with precision. It was clear that he was not relying on strength alone. His mind guided every movement. He understood timing, rhythm, and strategy. He was not trying to defeat her through force, but by using intelligence and awareness. The warrior princess tried a different approach. She slowed her attack slightly, testing him with feints and unpredictable movements. She aimed to catch him, off guard, believing that speed alone had been insufficient. Yet he read her shifts, anticipating her intentions. He adjusted smoothly, sometimes just stepping aside, other times changing direction in the smallest of ways that made her strikes miss. Every dodge, every adjustment, revealed a skill that was quiet, but remarkable. By now, the crowd had forgotten to breathe. The fight had gone far beyond what anyone had expected. Seconds turned into minutes, and still the man remained upright, still calm, still in control. The warrior princess's eyes widened. She realized that this was not just a human standing before her. This was someone who had mastered the art of survival and awareness. She had always relied on her speed, strength, and experience, but against him, those were no longer enough. She paused for a brief moment, taking a quick breath. For the first time, she studied him carefully. Every subtle movement, every calm reaction was a lesson. She saw that raw power alone could not guarantee victory. Awareness, patience, and the ability to adapt mattered just as much, if not more. She began to understand that this man's ordinary appearance had hidden an extraordinary mind and an unshakable focus. The townspeople watched, mesmerized. Their expectations of an instant victory had been shattered. The story of the man who might survive the alien warrior princess spread silently among them. Children whispered to each other, trying to imitate his calm stance. Adults shook their heads in disbelief, realizing that bravery did not always come in the form of strength. It could be quiet, intelligent, and deliberate. The warrior princess, sensing a shift in the balance, moved cautiously now. She was still fast, still strong, but her confidence had been tempered by the man's unexpected skill. She began to adapt, learning from him as much as he learned from her. The first minute, which she had assumed would end in his defeat, stretched on, and the realization that he might survive longer than she expected unsettled her. In the center of the square, two forms moved in a silent dance of awareness and strategy. The alien warrior princess, fierce and confident, and the quiet man, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in perception, faced each other not just in a battle of strength but in a contest of understanding. Each move told a story of patience, intelligence, and courage. The crowd had never seen anything like it, and many knew they never would again. And so, the encounter continued, defying expectations, challenging assumptions, and proving that true. Power is not always visible. In that moment, both the warrior princess and the man learned a lesson. Strength alone does not win battles, and courage can hide in the most unexpected forms. The fight had continued longer than anyone in Willow Creek could have imagined. The alien warrior princess had expected to defeat the man in less than a minute. Yet here they were, several minutes into the confrontation, and he still stood calmly in the center of the square. Her confidence, once unshakable, had begun to falter. She realized that this was no ordinary human. He had a skill she had never encountered before. Each of her strikes, once enough to defeat countless opponents, was now met with precise, deliberate movements. He didn't try to fight back with force, but instead relied on awareness and timing, letting her attacks flow past him without losing balance. Every subtle adjustment he made seemed effortless, yet each one was perfectly calculated. She began to notice patterns in her own movements that she hadn't seen before, patterns he was exploiting with quiet efficiency. The warrior princess took a moment to reassess. Her pride, which had fueled her victories for so long, had become a weakness. She realized she had underestimated this man's ability to observe and respond. For the first time, she felt a new emotion, uncertainty. Her attacks became more cautious, less aggressive, as she attempted to read him the way he had been reading her. The flow of battle had shifted. No longer was she dictating the fight entirely. The townspeople watched in astonishment. Their fear had turned into awe as they witnessed the unexpected turn of events. Children pressed closer to their parents, trying to understand what was happening. Adults shook their heads, unable to believe their eyes. This ordinary man, who had seemed weak and unremarkable, had forced the alien warrior princess to reconsider her own abilities. She was adapting, learning, and respecting him silently through every strike and dodge. The man continued to move with quiet precision. He didn't try to dominate or attack with force, yet every subtle action allowed him to maintain control. He understood that speed and strength were not enough. Knowledge, patience, and strategy mattered just as much. His calm presence, which had once seemed ordinary, was now extraordinary in its impact. Every movement told the warrior princess that this was a human who could survive against all odds. Realizing this, she changed her tactics. She began to move unpredictably, launching attacks that were less about brute strength and more about creativity and cunning. Yet he anticipated even these new strategies, adjusting his position and responses in ways that were almost imperceptible. The crowd could see the frustration in her eyes, a rare sight for someone who had always believed victory was guaranteed. The man, however, remained composed. He did not smile or gloat. His focus was absolute, and his movements reflected an understanding of both his opponent and himself. He was not trying to humiliate her or prove superiority. He was simply surviving, observing, and responding. In doing so, he demonstrated a strength that was quiet, steady, and profoundly effective. Minutes passed, each one longer than the last. The warrior princess, now fully aware that her assumptions were wrong, began to respect him. She saw that survival was not only about power, it was about intelligence, patience, and self-control. She began to adapt, learning from his movements, recognizing that her previous approach would not guarantee victory. Each strike she threw now carried careful thought, and each move she made considered his reactions. The townspeople, sensing the change in her demeanor, leaned forward in fascination. They had come to watch what they thought would be an easy victory, but now they witnessed something much greater. A battle of minds and skill, a clash where understanding, patience, and courage mattered more than raw power. Their hearts raced as they watched the unexpected duel unfold, a story of strength and humility revealing itself before their eyes. As the minutes continued, the warrior princess's respect for the man grew. She realized that his calm intelligence and observation skills allowed him to survive where brute strength alone could not. She understood that true power was not just about speed or agility. It was about thinking, anticipating, and adapting. The fight had become a lesson, one she had never expected to learn. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the warrior princess stopped momentarily. She lowered her arms slightly, breathing deeply, her eyes still fixed on the man. She had learned more in these minutes than in countless battles before. This human, whom she had underestimated, had shown her the meaning of strategy, patience, and quiet strength. She had discovered that survival was as much about the mind as it was about the body. The man remained calm, not a hint of arrogance in his demeanor. He had proven that courage and awareness could stand against overwhelming power. And in that shared moment of understanding, both of them recognized the truth. Victory was not always measured by who struck hardest or fastest, but by who could endure, adapt, and stay focused under pressure. The townspeople erupted in quiet applause, awed by what they had witnessed. The alien warrior princess had come expecting to dominate, yet she left the square with a newfound respect for human potential. The man, ordinary to the eye, but extraordinary in reality, had shown everyone that strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the greatest power is hidden in the calmest places. The warrior princess finally stepped back, lowering her hands completely. Her silver hair shimmered in the sunlight, her eyes still bright with energy, but now carrying something new: respect. She had come to Willow Creek expecting a quick victory, certain that no human could withstand her for more than a minute. Yet here she was, humbled, having learned a lesson she had never anticipated. The ordinary man in front of her had survived, not through brute strength but through intelligence, patience, and calm courage. The townspeople, once afraid, now looked at him with admiration. Children whispered excitedly among themselves, pointing at him and imagining themselves standing as bravely. Adults nodded quietly, realizing that assumptions about power could be misleading. The man had changed the way they saw courage, showing them that strength is not always visible and that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary feats. The warrior princess took a step closer. "I underestimated you," she admitted quietly, her voice filled with sincerity. "You have shown me that true strength is not always what can be seen. It is in the mind, the patience, and the courage to remain calm under pressure." The man nodded, understanding the depth of her words. He had not sought glory or recognition. His goal had been to survive and demonstrate that intelligence and awareness mattered just as much as raw power. The crowd watched in awe as the two figures stood together, a moment of quiet understanding between them. There was no victory in the traditional sense, no celebration of force or dominance. Instead, there was a mutual respect, a recognition of skills and character that went beyond appearances. The warrior princess had learned humility, and the townspeople had learned a lesson about courage that would stay with them forever. As the sun began to set, the warrior princess prepared to leave. She had come to test human strength, expecting an easy triumph, but she was leaving with something far greater: a new understanding of resilience, strategy, and the hidden potential in ordinary people. She gave a final nod to the man, acknowledging his skill and the lesson he had taught her. The man watched her leave, his expression calm, unchanged from the beginning. He returned to his quiet life, not seeking attention or reward, yet having earned the admiration and respect of an entire town. His actions had quietly reshaped their understanding of bravery and strength, proving that heroism can exist in subtle, unexpected ways. The people of Willow Creek slowly returned to their routines, but the story of the encounter spread quickly, becoming a legend in its own right. Parents told their children about the day the alien warrior princess came to town, and the ordinary man who survived against impossible odds. The tale inspired courage, respect, and the belief that anyone, no matter how ordinary they appeared, could face challenges with intelligence, patience, and unwavering focus. The warrior princess journeyed on, carrying with her the lesson she had learned. She knew that she had underestimated humans before, but now she understood that true strength often lies hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. And the man, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in ability, continued his life, quietly, knowing that sometimes the greatest victories are not celebrated loudly, but leave lasting impressions on the hearts and minds of those who witness them. In Willow Creek, the story endured. It became more than just a tale of strength. It became a story about courage, humility, and the unseen power that exists within every person. The minute that was supposed to be his end had instead shown the world that survival, intelligence, and calm determination could triumph in ways no one had ever imagined. And so life returned to its quiet rhythm, but the lessons remained, whispered in the streets, remembered in the hearts of the people, and carried forever in the story of the man who faced the alien warrior princess and proved that true power can come from the most unexpected places.